Welcome to Believe in Celtics. I'm your host, Warren Shaw, and as alongside me, as always, is the great Gary Washburn, and we're your host and resources for everything Celtics this season and all seasons. Gary, it's been a minute since we had a conversations after game one in the first round, Celtics Heat. How you been since then, my guy? How's everything been doing?
Everything's good. Playoffs going obviously pretty exciting around the league, and now we're to the conference semifinals, so should be a lot more fun as it increases. And the Celtics were able to obviously get past Miami without much trouble. And let's see what happens in this next series. But a lot of good series around Minnesota, Denver, Oklahoma City, Dallas. Obviously, and starting tonight, Knicks, Pacers, which should be maybe the most enjoyable of the series left.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna disagree there. I think Minnesota and Denver has definitely got my attention in general, but I think so there's some nostalgia with the Knicks and Pacers, but two competing styles, I think, in terms of a slower pace, faster pace for Indiana side, and New York really in the slug mode with Jalen Brunson kind of leading that. But good series, entertaining series, I think all around, man. And I'm really excited to kind of get into that. But we have a great show lined up for you all here. Since it's been a minute. We will have Spencer Davies joining us here from Hoop Industry and Cavs Insider to talk about the next series against the Cleveland Cavaliers here in round two. But before we got to, do a little bit of recap on our side. And always, we got to do our plugs. Make sure you follow Gary at G Washburn Globe. Make sure you follow me at Shaw Sports NBA. Make sure you follow Believe at Believe or at Believe Sports. And if you're listening to us on your audio platforms or YouTube, make sure you give our show a 5-star rating, like, subscribe, the whole nine and all of that. But the Boston Celtics, Gary, it's been really interesting, right? So they've had some days off since really taking care of business against the Miami Heat. Had a game two hiccup, 23 threes, for the Heat. But I don't know if they hit 23 threes the rest of the series, after Boston decided to kind of lock in there. What's been the vibe around the Celtics as they've waited for their second round opponent here, which ultimately ended up being the Cleveland Cavaliers? What's things been like in practice that you've seen? What are some of the things that they've been working on?
Just a lot of focus, just trying to, obviously they didn't find out till yesterday afternoon who they were going to play. So I just think they just focused on themselves in terms of just working on things that they probably felt like they didn't do enough in the Miami series and sharpen some things up and prepare for both opponents, whether it be in Orlando or Cleveland, bring a lot more size, a lot more imposing players in the paint. So obviously having to change probably their style a little bit as opposed to playing against Miami, which had Adebayo, but really didn't have a lot of low post threats. That's not the case against Cleveland with Evan Mobley. And now I think Jarrett Allen's now been listed as questionable for game one after missing the final three games of the series with the Orlando series with a rib injury. So they're going to have to deal with those two big hosses in the paint. So I think they're just kind of concentrating on, trying to figure out, okay, what's the best method here? How are we going to have to change our style, our game a little bit? There's obviously a versatile team. The Celtics can play many different styles, but I just think trying to figure out the best way to approach a Cleveland team that, as we saw, has some good points and some strengths, and definitely has some weaknesses.
Yeah, and just even going in a little bit more into that. So, like, Celtics now really are getting used to this. They have all this practice time without knowing who their opponent is going to be. So how do you feel like, Mazzulla and company have been kind of just managing that? How do you keep a team focused when it's like, well, it could be this team or it could be that team, as you're gearing up, for what you're hoping is a long playoff run?
Yeah, I just think that the goal is work on yourself, work on the things that you need to work on, whether it's being better shooters or working on free throws for Jaylen Brown, just get things that maybe didn't go as well as you'd like in the Miami series and things that you're going to have to work on regardless of who you face in the next round. So I don't think that they were like they were a little anxious. I'm sure all of them watched the game on Sunday to see obviously who officially it was that was going to be their opponent. But I also think they're just like, listen, whoever we play, we're going to have to play our best basketball to win, and let's just concentrate on that. So I thought their mentality was pretty much business-like, I'd say, just like, ready to get to the next round, getting a little bit anxious. It's been a few days. I think they closed out Miami on a Wednesday. So we're talking about 4 or 5 days now since that game. And so I think they're itching to play.
Yeah, as well they should be, right? So it's one of those things. Are they going to get rusty in that time? And just making sure that they can stay proverbially sharp. One of the things though that was a casualty, and it's funny that we talked about this, like you need to get out of that series as quickly as possible. But it wasn't the physical play of Miami, so per se, but ultimately Porzingis now ends up with the calf strain. I forget the medical terminology of the muscle, the subluxar or something to that degree, but what can you tell us about KP? A lot of conversation that he probably will not be available for the second series here. About how has he looked in your eyes, and kind of like how are his spirits being keeping up, understanding that he may not be available for the second round.
Yeah, it's a soleus muscle, the right soleus muscle, which is a muscle in the calf. The same injury that Giannis Antetokounmpo had that kind of kept him out for the entire Indiana series. So it's comparable in that way, but the Celtics haven't released, like, is it a grade 1, 2, or 3 strain? Grade 1 would be minor, obviously, maybe a week or two. Grade 2, 2 to 4 weeks, which I probably think this injury is. And then grade 3 would be 4 to 6 weeks. Porzingis has been walking around the practice facility with shoes on, so it's not like he's not running, he's not playing hoop, he's not, he might be taking like stationary shots or whatever. So he's not getting into basketball activity yet. But the fact is, he's not walking around with a boot. He's not walking with a major limp. He's not walking like, a week later that he's really down, or his foot really looks like it's in bad shape. It looks like probably it's going to be a week or two before he can start doing basketball stuff, basketball activity, pushing off on it. And they're going to take their time with this. This is a guy who's had a history of leg injuries. Already had obviously in his career torn ACLs, had some hips issues, adductors, calves. So this is a guy who probably needs to take an extra little few days off. And the good thing about the Celtics having time to wait, he's now a week into his recovery, and the Celtics haven't even played their game 1 of the conference semifinals yet. So to push this series back until Tuesday, although they're playing now every other day, they don't get a break, might have been an advantage for him, because now the clock has started a little bit later and he's a week into his rehab. So I think he'll be back within a couple of weeks. If you're shooting for the finals I think start June 1st or June 2nd, which to me it would be about a month or after the injury, a little bit more than that. So if you're the Celtics, you're probably hoping shooting for either the end of the conference finals, sometimes during the conference finals, or the NBA finals. I think they can get by in this series without Porzingis. They're going to have to. And they're 21-4 without him this season in the 25 games he's missed. So they've made it work, but I think it's going to be another couple of weeks.
Wow. And I think that's tough. I think there was some optimism. It's like, hey, maybe this will be, a 15-dayer, so to speak. And, he can appear maybe at the latter part of the second round. But I think, here, although there's no official prognosis here, more like the NBA finals, which would like put him later into June, which would be tough. And I think, again, they can't overlook anybody, in upcoming here, especially in this next round, which we'll get into in a little bit. But Boston definitely in some arrears here. What is the vibe, I think, even around that? Because Porzingis is somebody who does have, like you said, a history of injuries, has, from what you've seen, the fan base or even the media kind of said like, here we go. Because I think with Boston, that's always kind of what it has been thus far. It's just been like, the minute they slip up, are they slipping back into old habits? And for somebody like Porzingis, who also has a history of injuries, you know what? This is why we knew this would never work. Has that been the vibe that you've seen, I guess, from like the Boston community, so to speak? And how is the team itself handling, understanding that he will not be there, obviously, for a significant amount of time?
I think for the Celtics, it's next man up. I think you have to expect that some guys are going to get hurt. We've seen it all around the postseason. Guys are dropping, pretty frequently, right? So the Knicks are going on and have gone on without Julius Randle. The Mavericks just lost Maxi Kleber. There's Jamal Murray for the Nuggets is nursing a calf injury. So there's all types of injuries that are happening. I think the Celtics kind of understood that they're not going to be supremely and pristinely healthy throughout the postseason, things like this are going to happen. I think that considering Porzingis' mentality, he seems to be on the up, chipper, good spirits. I think that makes a team feel better that he's not, sounding like, okay, man, this might take me out for the season. And the fact that he's walking around, although he's wearing tennis shoes, that he's got his shorts on, so he might be doing, things with the other leg, or he might be just doing the natural rehabilitation, and that he's not in a boot, he's not walking on crutches after a week. These calf injuries can take, we had one in terms of covering the team a couple years ago with Marcus Smart, and I think it cost him 19 games, right? So these things can be pretty extensive, and I'm sure after a week, Marcus Smart was not walking around in tennis shoes when you miss 5-6 weeks. So if you're the Celtics, you just go through the process of rehabilitation. The team understands he's likely not going to be back for this series. And that's why you got Xavier Tillman. That's why you got Luke Cornett. That's why you signed Neemias Queta to a standard NBA deal to add a fourth big. This is why you got these big guys. And you can use every player on the roster if you need to win this series. They're just trying to get to the next round, buy their time, hopefully make this a quicker series, and then try to get some rest and get ready if that's the case for the next round.
Well, speaking of the next round, we'll be right back here. We're going to have Spencer Davies join us here to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers and Boston Celtics. Really exciting times here, as the Celtics push on here to the second round in the semifinals here against the Cleveland Cavaliers team that has given them some problems before, especially with the great Donovan Mitchell. We'll be right back here on Believe in Celtics.
Are you ready to step up your style without compromising the planet? Introducing the exciting partnership between Blueview Footwear and the 19 Media Group Network. Just visit bit.ly/Blueview19 to start your sustainable style journey. Our friends over at Blueview Footwear are renowned for introducing the world's first fully biodegradable sneaker. By using plant-based plastics, they are leading a revolution in cleaner materials and manufacturing. They have sleek and contemporary styles that cater to a wide range of tastes. Blueview Footwear believes that fashion and sustainability can coexist harmoniously. Explore their incredible collection of eco-friendly footwear by visiting bit.ly/Blueview19. If you let us know you made a purchase, we'll shout you out on our next show. Again, just visit bit.ly/Blueview19 today, and you'll see the ultimate collaboration of fashion, sustainability, and media excellence.
We're back as promised. Spencer Davies has joined us here from Hoop Industry Cavs Insider. Spencer, thank you so much for taking the time here. Weren't sure if we're going to be getting a chance to talk to you because we didn't know if, the Cavaliers would be the Game 7 winner, but ultimately they are. How you doing, brother? Thanks again so much for being here with us.
No problem, man. Yeah, no, it's been a pretty crazy series, obviously. Crazy playoffs, I should say, for the Cavs, just because they were in a dogfight with the Magic for 7 games. And those last 3 especially were really, really physical, really tough games just to get through as far as the way that the guys are attacking the glass and attacking teams defensively. And it was just a brawl, man. It was just a brawl, to be honest. But they made it through. Credit to them. They faced a lot of adversity there in Game 7. A lot of people thought that they were going to fold, and down basically 20 in the first half, had nothing going for you, and caught a little bit of momentum there to close the half. And then, Donovan Mitchell takes over, and he gets big quarter from Max Strus. Caris Levert picks up the slack, and Darius Garland has probably the best quarter he's had of the playoffs to close the fourth there. So they've got a little bit of momentum, I think, just in the fact that they got that kind of thing that follows them, right? That they couldn't get out of the first round. They've been playing these tough teams, and that they couldn't match this physicality, but they did it, and ultimately they made it to the second round.
Yeah, indeed they did. So I know I forget how many years it was, but a lot is being made and bantered about first times, post LeBron era, so forth, and X amount of years, et cetera, et cetera. Donovan Mitchell been very vocal about what he perceives success to mean for himself and this Cavaliers team. And I think he really, put the team on his back here, and especially in those final 2 games, if you will, too. Even though the loss in Game 6, he really was trying to make sure to close things out. And I think he had a massive performance, obviously, in Game 7. So let's jump right in here to the Spencer. And then, Gary, I want to have you tap in as well. Gary alluded to on the first part of our segment that Jarrett Allen is questionable. What can you tell us, Spencer, about Jarrett Allen's status as we're going into game one?
So what I heard was that it was an elbow he took from Franz Wagner in one of the games, and that it's not really like a bruised ribs like they're listing it. A couple reports have suggested that he actually had, his lung pierced essentially. And so that made it hard for him to kind of, lift his shoulder up and to kind of breathe essentially. So that's why he was, missing those last couple of games. And, that's a huge, obviously, blow for the Cavs as far as the glass goes and as far as having a role threat goes. But to Evan Mobley's credit, he did the job defensively. Obviously, some shortcomings there on the offensive end as far as, being in the post and back to basket, but really good as a role threat and really good as somebody that can, pick up the slack on the boards and do a good job of really contesting shots and altering shots at the rim. So they've been able to make it work. They've had a little bit more some space to work with, playing a little smaller, playing a little faster. But Jarrett Allen, I'm not sure what his status is going to be going into tomorrow. Donovan Mitchell sounded optimistic yesterday about him coming back, sooner rather than later. But I wouldn't say that it's set in stone that he'd be back tomorrow for the first game in Boston.
Kick it over to you, Gary.
Yeah, it sounds like, I think the guy that Celtics fans are concerned about is Caris Levert. Having watched him over the years, I saw him drop 52 on the Celtics when he's with the Nets. Like, there's a list of guys that just play well against the Celtics. Like, we call it the Ish Smith list. Caleb Martin is a first team on that list. There's a bunch of guys around the league that Terrence Ross was our friend Terrence Ross, who retired, used to light up the Celtics. And Caris is first team on that list. I guess, like, Marco's question is, like, it seems like his role is kind of diminished some. Like, he's not starting. He's kind of coming off the bench. They're just like, what happened with his role this year? I thought it's kind of been lessened a little bit to where he's just kind of like a microwave guy as opposed to where you thought he might be like a starter.
Yeah, so the last couple of years with Caris has been really interesting because last year he kind of took over this backup point guard role, right? And he was doing they were asking him to guard, the opposing team's best player when he was out on the floor. A lot more focus on, catch, shoot threes, which he did a really good job with last year. This season, he's kind of been back to his regular role of, like you said, being a microwave scorer and doing a little less of that. But, they've had injuries. So, like, Darius Garland was down for a significant part of the season in the middle. So he had to go back to what the role was last year and doing a little bit more playmaking. And he does, a really good job with that with Jarrett Allen especially. But he's just kind of had his role's been defined, but he's had so many. He's like a Swiss Army knife for them, honestly. It's hard to kind of describe what he does, but he is really good, like you said, against Boston for some reason. He just kind of has this unique, unorthodox pace to him, where he's able to break guys down off the dribble, and has a really good change of pace. I think he's really, really gotten better, and I think you saw it too towards the end of that game in Game 7 against Orlando, is the way that he's effective in transition. And it's the kind of the way that he runs the floor on the side, really knows how to react and read defenses and the ways that he attacks the rim. So I think that's also it. But you mentioned it, Gary. He had some ridiculous shooting games against Boston in the last year or two as well. And I remember that game when Darius Garland was out and him and Donovan Mitchell both went for 40 plus. Yeah, it was an insane performance. But Caris, he's gotten very, very good defensively with this team, especially with, Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley there behind him. But he's really just done whatever the team's asked of him. And I know it's kind of a cop-out answer, but it's hard to describe because I feel like it changes every night what they need.
Yeah, I think very well said, Spencer. So I'm going to even kind of flip Gary's question on you a little bit, right? So from the Celtics lens, it can be very off-putting when somebody, not necessarily random, but again, somebody's like, why does this guy kind of give us the business, so to speak. I don't know that the Celtics have somebody that the Cavaliers like has a history with, so to speak. But is there somebody in this series outside of obviously Tatum, Brown, et cetera, a role player on Boston that you are concerned about from Cleveland's standpoint, whether that, and it doesn't necessarily mean like they're going to score a bunch of points, but they can impact the game that you obviously would not want for your Cavaliers?
Yeah, so I don't think it's respectful to even call him a role player, but Derrick White is just a menace. Derrick White, I was telling Cavs fans in the podcast that I did yesterday, if you thought that Jalen Suggs and Gary Harris were annoying on the perimeter defensively, be prepared for Drew Holiday and Derrick White, because those guys are relentless with their ball pressure. They have just amazing IQ, whether it's off the ball, on the defensive end. And obviously we saw what Derrick White did in round one on the offensive end of the floor. So he really brings it. It's going to be tough for Donovan Mitchell, who's still obviously hobbling. Like, he's not 100% by any means. He's fighting through it and he's doing a dang good job of it. But there's definitely a way to kind of slow him down, especially if it's in the half court. You want him to take jumpers. You don't want him to get into the paint. That's the way that the Cavs really struggle, is when they play half court basketball and they don't touch the paint and they're passing it around the perimeter and forced to shoot, because guys haven't made their shots. I think they made 29% from three in the first round. So that's, obviously probably an area of focus for Boston to go on the defensive end there. And obviously to turn the Cavs over too, because when Orlando was able to turn them over, it was just lights out. So for me, to go back to your question though, that quote unquote role player, it'd probably be Derrick White, number one. And I'd say Drew Holiday, number two, just because of what they can do defensively in that backcourt. That really, I think is an opposing threat, more than the front court battle, because I think Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen experienced the Knicks and the Magic the last 2 years. And those teams are probably among the most physical in the NBA when it comes to boxing out and contesting for rebounds and all that stuff. So I think they're prepared for that kind of physical challenge now.
Gary, I'm going to kick this over to you because as Spencer kind of touched on Donovan Mitchell. So Donovan Mitchell, as a star player, somebody who also plays very well against the Boston Celtics. But if you've been following social media, Jayson Tatum has been, he's been the subject of a lot of strays for no reason. And it's been really interesting to kind of watch. And I think as Ant has really done what he's done on the Western Conference side, I'm seeing things. Anthony Edwards is greater than Jayson Tatum. That's fine. You can make that argument, a younger guy, et cetera, et cetera. But then I saw, like, in the same reel, if you will, and Donovan Mitchell, after this Game 7 performance, he's better than Jayson Tatum. I don't necessarily need to make it about that per se, but I think Donovan Mitchell might be more explosive offensively, while Tatum is more well-rounded, especially on the defensive side. But what is the situation that you get? Like, is there a guy that you would trust more when it comes to the clutch moments of this series, Gary, between Tatum and Mitchell?
I probably would trust Mitchell more because he has the ability to get to the basket. He does not mind contact. At times, Tatum tends to avoid contact. He wants to get calls, but yet he avoids contact. And so sometimes down the stretch in clutch moments, Tatum is not the most clutch. So I would probably trust Mitchell in that situation. And then that guy's, he's like a bull in a china shop. He's going to take contact. He's going to get to the rim. He's got such creative ways to make layups. He uses the glass. The strategy for the Celtics is it could be like Game 6 where it's like, okay, Donovan, go off. But no one else is getting nothing. And that's what happened. And he scored 50 of their 96 points, and they all 18 in the fourth, and everybody walked in, and they lost the game. I thought Game 7, Orlando was just terrible offensively. I've just never seen Franz Wagner. I've never seen him look worse. Wendell Carter was taking a bunch of bad shots. He was taking 16-footers. I don't know if they have any offensive philosophy there. They've got to get a point guard, one. It can't be Markelle Fultz. Cole Anthony is just kind of like a guy, like an undersized 2 guard. Suggs shoots too many damn threes, and he can hit them. But it was I just watched Orlando, and it was they're kind of giving you the game. And obviously they're up 48-31. And once the Cavs hit those 2 threes to begin the second half, you're like, okay, this is a whole new game. That lead is gone. The momentum is completely shifted. So I trust Mitchell just in the clutch, but Tatum has the ability, like all great scorers, to go off. He can score in many different ways. I'm wondering who is going to guard him. Is it going to be Okoro, who's 6'5", and Tatum 6'10"? Is that going to be the matchup? Because they don't have kind of a, like, Orlando is probably more of a concern in the sense of defensively, because Jonathan Isaac is so long that he can give longer offensive players issues because he's so long and he can get in your, and he's not trying to score. And Okoro's the same way. Okoro, I think the key to the series, if he can hit that corner three, they can make Cleveland way more versatile. I think the Celtics will let him shoot that and have to improve that. But I also think it's like, well, who's going to guard? First of all, I think Mitchell and Garland are both going to have to defend, and who do they defend? Okay, because Mitchell, he's not the bad defender he was in Utah. He tries, but if you make him work on both sides, I think that tires him out on offense. And Garland's 6'1", and they list him at 190, and I know that dude ain't 190. Like he's 175. So who does he guard? Does he guard White? Does he guard Holiday? Because Holiday's not as much of a scorer this year. It's going to be interesting how the defensive philosophy of Cleveland against Brown and Tatum. So I think that's fascinating. Another note about this game is that the reason the Celtics have Sam Hauser is because of Max Strus, because they had Max Strus in their system right out of DePaul. He was the sharpshooter, but he was a rookie. He lost his roster spot to Javonte Green, who bounced to Chicago because Green had just an incredible camp. And then the Celtics chose to sign or continue to sign Taco Fall to a two-way. So they released Strus. Then Strus becomes this really good shooter in Miami. So the Celtics said, we'll never let a potential three-point threat like that ever again. So they signed Hauser out of Virginia, undrafted, put him through their system, let him take a couple of years, and now he's a sharpshooter. So, like, the whole thing is the reason Hauser is where he is because the Celtics knew they screwed up with Strus. So that's just kind of an interesting nugget there because, Strus, when I've looked at his numbers, 35% from three of the last 2 years, not premium shooting numbers, but he can get hot. So they're going to have to obviously watch out for him too. And then Strus does try on defense. He is not like hard on both sides of the ball. And I just think Cleveland's going to have to work real hard and have some guys besides Mitchell step up offensively.
I'm going to tap in there and bring you in as well too, Spencer. So, because it's interesting, I had an opportunity. I live in the Miami area, and so when Strus was still in Miami, I asked him specifically, and going into last year, I said, well, listen, people seem to want to target you defensively last year, and he took that personally. He's like, yeah, you can try me if you want to. So he does try, on that side of the basketball, and was obviously brought in to fill that small forward void that the Cavs have had for such a long time. So talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on Strus, what he brings to them on both sides of the basketball, and especially as Gary's alluding to, who's going to guard some of the Celtics' bigger wings.
Yeah. So with Max, I think that you're right. He has definitely gotten better defensively. I think it also helps, again, to have guys like Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen behind you. The Cavs, their defense this year wasn't quite as good as last year, but they're still a top 10 D, no question. It's just the way that they pack the paint with Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, and the fact that Evan Mobley can cover an entire half court and help defense and all that. So Max is able to be up on the ball a little further than he's probably used to in Miami. So that's, gotten him some steal opportunities. That's led him to be able to cut off drives a lot better. So that's, I think, a part of his game that was really big for them this year. It's crazy because, his 3-point shot has been so fluctuating. But like Gary said, he can get hot. He's ignitable, as Eric Spoelstra said at one time. So that can play in a playoff series if he sees one go through. And you saw that in the third quarter yesterday against Orlando. As far as who's going to guard Tatum and who's going to guard Jaylen Brown, and that's interesting to me because I think that JB Bickerstaff is going to look to Isaac Okoro first with Jayson Tatum. And Okoro played against Paolo Banchero. And Paolo Banchero is a big dude. He's like 6'10", 250, 260, and he's got some muscle on him.
Yeah.
Tatum ain't that big. He's not. He's about the same height and whatnot, and can shoot over the top, and that's what Paolo did against Isaac Okoro. But Isaac was able to kind of get a little bit of a good experience in that way to play someone that was bigger than you and stronger than you. Just so he was trying to push him off his spot and that stuff. So that's gonna, I think, prepare him for the Tatum assignment. I think you will see Evan Mobley on Jayson Tatum, no question. There's gonna be switches involved in this. And same with Jarrett Allen whenever he gets healthy. The missing piece, I think, for Cleveland on the defensive end in this case, and Gary, I'm sure you saw it against Cleveland, was Dean Wade. Dean Wade, from what I heard, is probably done for the postseason because of a knee injury that he's facing. And that's probably their best wing defender for bigger wings. And because he's got, versatility on that end of the floor. He could stretch out to the three on the offensive end, and he's just kind of a bigger body. That's somebody they've really been missing. George Niang has really had a tough go of it in this first round. I'm sure they'll go back to him against Boston and try to get his confidence back. Series are different for everybody in the playoffs. We know that. We've seen people be played out of the series and help the next. But I feel like they're going to probably try Isaac Okoro, Evan Mobley, and then they might even try George on Tatum in some situations. But they faced Paolo and Franz Wagner, and those are not small guys.
No.
So they're ready for that. Again, that physical challenge. It's the schematics. It's where do you want to force Tatum to go? Do you want him to go right instead of get to that patented step back to the left? That's kind of stuff that I'm looking for in guarding somebody like Jayson Tatum.
Before we wrap up here, I wanted to get a couple other quick points in. So Gary, I'm going to throw this one to you here now. So Cleveland, again, they're not a bad defense team in any stretch of the imagination, right? But there's a lot of consternation, if you will, about should they be playing double bigs, and will that work against Boston? And we had Tatum stating at the end of the Heat series, like, people want to rough us up. They think we're too finesse, and is that really how you want to play us? Do you think Cleveland will try to be more physical? Will they limit threes and try to filter stuff into those two big guys in Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, or would that be a mistake? Based on Boston's array of options offensively.
I think it's probably the best way to defend them if you want to go 2 for 2. There's just so many wild cards here is that you have Derrick White who can shoot, because it's not just Tatum and Brown. Tatum has not had a great 3-point season. He just hasn't. Now, I wouldn't just sit there and let him shoot him, but in a sense, I kind of would. Like, I'd leave him open over White and probably over Brown, just because he's not been as good from the 3-point line this year as he has in the past. You probably want to test him. But I think if you're the Celtics, you want to move the ball around, move Mobley and Allen around, get them away from the basket, try to penetrate, get the floaters. Also go at Garland and Mitchell, maybe make them work on both ends. I mean, Garland offensively is a terror because he's so damn fast. He can get to, and he's so creative in terms of those floaters, those, going under the basket, and then he can hit the three. Now, I think confidence was an issue, which I really hadn't, and I'm sure Spencer's seen it. I hadn't really seen that before out of Garland, where he just kind of was shook. And that was interesting. Just like Franz Wagner was shook in Game 7 before that fourth quarter, I hadn't seen Garland lack confidence, and that was interesting. So it'll be interesting to see if that carries over to Game 1. But I think on the Miami, I think the good thing about playing Miami is they saw every defense they're probably going to see. 2-3 zone, 3-2, 2-2-1. They saw everything. They probably, like, Spoelstra threw everything at them, and there were games that they just said, you know what, we're going to attack the rim and get to the free throw line. Other games where the three was open. I think they're that versatile to play offensively. But absence of Porzingis is a factor in terms of rim protection and also spreading the floor. But Horford, can also shoot threes. If he knocks a couple down, he can hit 5 or 6 in a game. Not to say that's going to happen, but he's a streaky 3-point shooter. He can bring Mobley or Allen away from the basket. So I just think it's going to be kind of this, especially in the first half, this chess game of like, okay, what are you guys going to do? We'll react to that. What's your game plan? In the 3 meetings in the regular season, I don't know how much they mean. They met back-to-back in December, long time ago. I think Mobley missed both those games. And then the Dean Wade game in March, where he scored 20 in the fourth, and Tatum went nuts in the first half, and then I think it was 1 for 11 in the second half, because as this team can do, it starts when they get a lead, they mess around and start shooting threes, start shooting bad threes, and then suddenly there's a 9-10-0 run, and all of a sudden a 20-point lead's down to 9, and they're battling. So it's really kind of hard to figure out like how these two teams match up, because all 3 games kind of have a deception. And in the second game in Boston, Garland ran into Porzingis and I think broke his jaw. So he played, I don't even think he played the second half of the second game. And I think he was out for a month with that. I mean, it was just kind of one of those freak injuries where you literally ran into Porzingis' forearm and then was just like doing this. And it was like, oh man, I thought he had a concussion, but I think it was a broken jaw. So it's hard to figure out these two teams because and then Mitchell didn't play in the third game, the Dean Wade game. Mitchell was on the bench. So I think these two teams are going to take probably a full game to figure each other out, because there's just not a lot of familiarity. There's scouting and all that stuff. And, but now you got if Allen plays 2 pretty much full rosters, Porzingis not going to play. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how each side plays it like a chess match.
So as we close out here, Spencer, I'll throw this to you. Cleveland can win this series if what happens? What is the key to the series for Cleveland?
I can give you the most obvious one: make shots. It's literally, it's been a tough go in the playoffs for this team. They've only cracked 100 like 3 times, and that includes last year against the Knicks and this year obviously against Orlando. It's been hard for them to crack 100 because if Donovan's not going, they have to find other ways, and a lot of it involves heavy high pick and roll, a lot of high pick and roll. They need to be able to spread the floor, make shots. They have to be better in transition after they create turnovers. I think that's interesting because, they're not finishing fast breaks sometimes. So that's another, kind of point to look at. Another thing too, I think is interesting, and we haven't touched on it really, but Tristan Thompson and Al Horford have seen each other quite a bit in the playoffs. So I'm interested to see if, JB Bickerstaff dials that number in a couple of these games just for a few stints. And then there's another connection too that I'm sure you talked about too, Gary, is Marcus Morris. Marcus Morris, if he gets playing time, he knows the Celtics very well. And, he was huge for the Cavs in Game 5. Didn't have the best of offensive games the last 2, but that might be another even guy to put on Tatum too defensively if they feel like that's something that works out for him. But yeah, to win this series and to end up winning any of these games on the road, the Cavs are going to need to make shots and they're going to need to take care of the basketball.
Gary, as we close out, quick predictions. What do you have? Celtics in or Cavs in what?
I think Celtics in 6. Or maybe even 5. I just think it all depends on how intent and forceful. If the Cavs, I think the best chance is for them to win Game 1, to be hot off the Game 7, come in, punch first. That combination of Donovan and Levert, just both 30 plus, and then guys like Niang come off the bench, hit a couple threes, and they just have one of those great shooting nights. That's, I think, their best chance to have, kind of extend the series. But I think Cleveland's bench is kind of a concern. Like Spencer said, Niang just did not play the last 3 games. I think he played 7 total minutes the last 3 games of the Orlando series. They just don't have a lot of guys off the bench. If you're really relying on a 33-year-old Tristan Thompson, that's a tough situation. Marcus Morris, great guy, loved covering him in Boston. He loved playing in Boston, but he's 35 now. Like what more can you expect from him? So it's gonna. And then with Wade out, obviously, for likely for the entire series. And what Spencer said, like that's a tough one too, because he gives them another body, a good defender. So it's going to take a lot for Cleveland, because I just think their shooters haven't made shots. I'm talking about like Niang and Strus. And then, as Spencer pointed out, Donovan's playing kind of on a gimpy knee. Garland's struggling with confidence. But who knows? They might flip the switch and be that formidable opponent. That team that won 17 to 18 games in early January into February. That was they were the hottest team in the league for about 6 weeks.
Spencer, your thoughts, predictions here too. I mean, obviously you're a Cavs guy, but I mean, your honest opinion on how you think the series will go.
Yeah, no, they haven't given me any indication that they can play on the road. So that just kind of really takes me out of saying that this is going to even get to 6. So I have the Celtics in 5. It's just there's just too much Jekyll and Hyde with them. That's the thing. And the thing too is, a lot of people around here talk about JB Bickerstaff's rotation sometimes, and guys that don't play. Sam Merrill barely played in the first round against the Magic, and that's somebody that really gives you some juice as a movement shooter and as a floor spacer. He should probably play, but he doesn't play much. I just don't know, especially, you look at how Evan Mobley closed the series too offensively, and it just seems like he's still got a little ways to go developmentally, especially if Jarrett Allen's not in there. Donovan scored 89 points the last 2 games. The law of averages and the way that his body works, it's just so hard to sustain that. Mm-hmm. Darius Garland, though, he could pick up the slack. He can. If he could ride that wave, then they're going to be in okay shape. And like I said, they have to make shots. They have to be able to compete with this team offensively. There should be no worry on the defensive end for the Cavaliers. It's all about the offensive end of the floor. And if they're not cracking 100, it's going to be hard to beat the favorites for a title.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap there. Make sure you follow my guy, Spencer. He's an amazing follow, an amazing dude in general. Make sure you catch his work, over at Hoop Industry, Cavs Insider. Follow him at Spencer Davies on Twitter. You know what it is with Gary Washburn, G Washburn Globe. Make sure you're catching those writings over there on the Boston Globe. And if you're so inclined, you can follow me at Shaw Sports NBA as well, too. Thank you so much, Spencer. Gary, great conversation here. See how this Cleveland Cavaliers Boston Celtics series plays out here in the semifinals. Catch you next week here on Believe in Celtics, y'all. Thank you so much.